The battle for gold at the Olympics is going to be between the US and Brazil. So let's talk about it. Well, a US-Brazil final was certainly not on many people's bingo card, but I mean, is anything happening at the Olympics been on people's bingo card lately? The U.S. men's national team defeated Japan in the quarterfinals in an extra time goal and did pretty much the same in the semifinal against Germany by an extra time goal, booking their ticket into the final. Brazil knocked out the hosts in the quarterfinals by a 1-0 victory and then went on to show us quite a performance against the World Cup champions by defeating Spain 4-2 in the semifinal, booking their ticket into the final. It'll be Germany and Spain to fight out who can make it on the podium. It's going to be an all-European showdown for that bronze medal, as US and Brazil obviously fight out for gold. It's actually a repeat from the 2004 and 2008 Olympics final. Both of these finals were won by the Americans, so it could be a three-piece. It could be a little bit of a different story here, and that's what we're going to be talking all about today. Not to mention, this is also the exact matchup that we saw at the Gold Cup. So, Gold Cup making a pretty good name for themselves here for anybody who had some nasty things to say about the level of competition, but that's not the topic today. We're going to first talk a little bit about the finalists, what we have seen from them so far, and what are we going to expect them to do on Saturday, as then I move on to talk a little bit about Germany and Spain. The US men's national team breezed out of the group stages. They topped their group on all 3 out of 3 possible games, including defeating Australia, Zambia, and Germany, and it looked like it was pretty much a perfect group stage run. The game against Japan showed us a little bit of fatigue. I think perhaps the fact that there was not much rotation happening in the group stages caught up to them. Going up to 120 minutes didn't really help, and it was a little bit of the similar narrative against Germany. And Germany actually went in, down a few players of Alex Popp and Leah Schuler not being in. And in some ways, the fact that Germany didn't have those players allowed the US to get away with their lackluster midfield. 2 late goals in extra time against Japan and Germany is the narrative of how the US men's national team has booked their ticket into the final. And I think the US men's national team attacking line is clicking and it's clutch. To the rescue against Germany was Sophia Smith. To the rescue against Japan was Trinity Rodman. And I think Sophia Smith, Trinity Rodman, and Mal Swanson, the way that these 3 have been combining has been really, really exciting to see. Not only can you tell their confidence is clearly on display, but that confidence of wanting to shoot is also kind of translating to the creativity input that they're putting out on the field, and that has also been very exciting to see. Regardless of opposition and regardless of which moment in time they are at the game, they are not losing any of that confidence, and I think that's exciting for a front line that's actually quite young. The 3 have been involved in 10 out of the 11 goals for the US this tournament. All 3 of them sit at 3 goals each. All 3 of them have at least have an assist under their belt, and so those 3 are on form in terms of what you're looking for your attackers to be. In the semifinal, Germany approached the game in their pretty expected 4-4-2, even though, again, with the injuries and some of the excluded players, you would have maybe expected that to be switched up a little bit. But I think the way they approached it prompted Emma Hayes to do the same, of putting out their 4-4-2, Rose Lavelle kind of pulling on the left flank. Obviously, Trinity Rodman is that 4th right player, with Mal Swanson and Sophia Smith up top as the main central runners. Crystal Dunn has also been a little bit of a dark horse here, and against Japan she gave that game-winning assist, and against Germany she'd often be the one queuing up that attack, starting that attack. Often how she pulled up, it almost gave the US 5 options up top. They'd combine as 5 numbers in the attacking end, and so Crystal Dunn, let's give her a little bit of more props. But that attacking front line of the US is looking frightening. I think obviously Emma Hayes is going to be making sure they're in bubble wrap and relaxing as much as possibly they can relax with this hectic schedule, because they've started every single game. They've played the majority of the minutes. When their opposition has lost a little bit of momentum, they've made sure to capitalize on that moment, and that's essentially what you're looking for your front line. So the US front line is clicking, it's clutch, it's doing exactly what they need to do regardless of the opposition, and it's getting the US through the knockout stages, even when the team's performance have not been top notch. And that has largely come from, I think, the midfield struggling a little bit. I think Lindsey Horan has not had the best tournament. I think she has almost been on a different page than the rest of her midfielders, but even when the front line is not getting the service they really desire, they're making the most out of the moments and the service that they do often get. And that's ultimately what you're looking for in a team who wants to score goals. But also, when you want to score goals, you got to make sure you're keeping a clean sheet. The U.S. has only conceded 2 goals. Alyssa Nair has been brilliant, but we need to shout out Naomi Girma, who has been massive. Emma Hayes telling reporters on ground that Naomi Girma is the best defender she's ever worked with, like the best, is absolutely valid and fair props, especially after that Germany game. It's almost like Naomi Girma's foot, head, left foot, thigh, whatever body part was legal to touch the ball, was there intercepting every single ball Germany wanted to put into the box. If it was from either of the flanks, if it was a central pass, if it was whatever kind of ball Germany was putting into the box, Girma was there to intercept and steer the danger away. She's really good at being aware of her surroundings, really aware of where the opposition is. Like I mentioned, literally puts her body on the line. And I think Germany really grew frustrated to just seeing Girma at the end of every single ball. But regardless of which option they seeked, Girma was still there causing them trouble. More impressive than anything is also how disciplined she is. You know, a player that is involved in so many challenges and so many ball interceptions. She's very disciplined for the way she doesn't foul. She's very disciplined and she doesn't give the opposition a reason to call a challenge or to call a penalty. Like, she's very clean and disciplined. And it's very rare that we see a player who's as involved in her, as kind of forward-minded as she is, but so good on her defensive duties. Like, Naomi Girma really is kind of the perfect defender that any team wants to have. And I think the US having a solid rock like her in the back has been monumental for how they got to this point. Her partnership with Emily Fox has also been quite fun to watch. They two made it pretty hard for Germany to break them up and break them down. But being present, clean, dominant is what Girma has been for the US this Olympics. And I don't doubt that she's going to probably have another masterclass in the final. A little bit different to what the US has shown us. Brazil has shown us squad depth. And if you remember, Brazil was one of the 2 teams that finished 3rd in their standing, and they were one of the best 2 teams that advanced, along with Colombia, Australia being the team that missed out. And in my preview episode, I was a little bit critical of the squad in terms of it was a huge turnover. It was a huge change from last summer of the World Cup. And even in the post-group stage preview that I did, I was like, they're showing a little bit of transition aches and transition pains, which I think is still happening. And I don't think that's a crazy thing to say because, you know, in any transition area, there's going to be some of these aches that are bound to happen. But what I actually think with the amount of injuries that they've had and the amount of rotations they've had to bite into and the number of players they've used from the alternate squad, it's almost played in their favor, where now, even if they're down a few players and even if they're having to play with a few injuries, they've explored and built partnerships that were previously not explored. Coming into the semifinal against Spain, they were without key names like Tamirez. They also didn't have Rafaela Souza. They also didn't have Marta, who was serving a 2-game suspension because of a red card, on top of the other injuries that had already left because of a broken tibia. Like the Brazilian squad is seriously dropping like flies. But they've been able to tap into their squad depth. And I think the moment that we realized, actually, Brazil are really interested in playing with their squad depth is the first 2 games. So if you compare the starting 11 they rolled out against Nigeria and the starting 11 they rolled out against Japan, they had 6 changes and they didn't have many injuries to play around with here that they had to make these 6 changes. But it's almost like moving that rotation around and exploring different partnerships is really benefiting them in the long run right now. Yasmin and Ana Vitória, for me in particular, have been impressive with their contributions on the fast break. Yasmin scored her first assist of the tournament for Brazil and their second goal against Spain, and she's kind of been the player that is at the right time, in the right moment, in the right place. Lauren as well started both games against Spain in the back, but you could really tell and see her improved awareness of the Spaniards' crosses on Tuesday. I mean, any ball that came from either flank, she was ready to intercept, and she was a crucial element in Brazil's defensive job in that semi-final. So Lauren, you also got to give her a round of applause, given the number of defensive players that have fallen around her. Brazil really made the most out of their uncomfortable situations that put them in the situation of performing the way they did against Spain. The level of heart that team showed in their semi-final win kind of spoke volume to this set of players. That is, yes, a bit of a change in era, transition aches, all of this and that of a new head coach, new set of players, but they showed us exactly what they could do on a good day, and that's really exciting thinking about the fact that, we're only 3 years away from them hosting a World Cup, and this is exactly what Brazil needed to do to bounce back off a very disappointing World Cup. A lot of these players probably grew up under the leadership of Marta, and she's brought up these youngsters that are fighting now to hopefully put a gold medal around her neck, which, wouldn't that be a fairy tale? They've also sharpened up their counterattacks, and I think the way to beat Spain has always been to catch them on the counterattack, but that is much, much easier said than done. The world champions don't lose possession often, and when they do, they're pretty quick to reclaim it. Katakol has been relatively consistent. She had too many blunders against Brazil, but that happens. But in a general sense, she's been pretty consistent. Leaky, but pretty consistent across. And that back line has improved in tracking back again. Like I mentioned in one of the preview episodes, is looking at Spain. They had conceded 10 goals in the last 11 games pre-Olympics. So them being caught by the counterattack isn't new, but what made up for it usually is that they can score a lot of goals. And we're going to talk about Spain in it a little bit, but 2 of their 4 goals were off the counterattack, and I think had they actually been a little bit more clinical with their counterattacks, that scoreline would have looked a lot more devastating than it ended up being, right? Brazil could have easily had 4 goals in like the 50th minute. The Brazil front line had a lot of joy just sitting and kind of plotting in between Spain's center backs who struggled to close them down. Olga Carmona, she had a pretty bad day at the office when it came to any defensive duty. She really, really struggled to keep up with Ledema on that end, and she just did not have a good time. And when Spain's back line wasn't having a good time, Brazil's front line was having an outstanding time. Brazil's attacking front line right now looks pretty different than when it did 12 months ago, but it is not lacking any aggressive runners who can strike with calmness. You can switch up that talent as many times as you want, with as many partnerships as you want, but what you'll get is still aggressive runners who are calm in their finishing. And I think that just talks a lot about Brazil's frontline's talent. They rolled out a 3-4-3, they were sharp on their counterattack, and they punished Spain, who is extremely disorganized in the back, and I think it was a fully deserved win for Brazil. And again, maybe the fairy tale of Marta ending her international career with a gold medal, wouldn't that be something? And talking a little bit more about Spain, I think we really have to question some of the player decisions that were made in that semifinal. The decision to put Alexia Putellas in on the 77th minute because you wanted to give the other players an opportunity to play and showcase their talents is just ludicrous. If I'm going to follow this argument of, yes, Spain wanted to showcase their bench, they wanted to give a little bit of rest to the likes of Alexia Putellas, okay, I can understand that for a moment. But why would you not bring on Alexia Putellas in the form that she has been when Spain is 2-0 down at the half? On which, I'm just scratching my head thinking, what is the thinking pattern between bringing her on in the 77th minute when you are being pretty badly down? You have been screaming for a little bit of difference. You've been screaming for a little bit of different creativity input. You bring her on the 77th minute when the game is pretty much gone. It makes absolutely no sense to me. And in the the 15 to 30 minutes that Alexia Putellas played, she showed us exactly what Spain were missing. And I think they're going to sit and wonder the question of what if had she been brought in the 45th minute. Now, it hasn't been mentioned that she was dealing with an injury. It didn't look like she was dealing with an injury. So the idea to keep her out because you wanted to give the opposition a different look is just insane when Alexia Putellas have been nothing but fantastic this Olympics. It mind boggles me. What also gives me another brain itch and a head scratcher is the way that they just could not adjust their back line. The way their defensive shape was just so poor, and the way the center backs could not for the life of them defend and keep close down that area between them where the Brazilian runners were just going. This is basic coaching. This is with good coaching, you'll be able to close down these spaces and you'll be able to organize it within yourselves. And so Spain's horrific, backline performance against Brazil was so poor that, again, you've got to be giving yourself a head scratcher of Was there no plan B? What did you talk about at halftime that nothing else changed? And so, if that's what they're looking to roll up against Germany, Leah Schuler it's gonna punish. And speaking of Leah Schuler in Germany, extremely unlucky to have Alex Popp and Schuler not be available for that semifinal game. Schuler has been on such superb form, clinical, there where she needs to be, and just very devastating. And so obviously not to have her was not ideal for Germany. But I also don't think Germany has mixed it up enough. They're a little bit too predictable, and I feel like they're approaching it of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they've won all their games except that group stage game against the US. But other than that, they've gone to the semifinal. They probably thought it ain't broke, so they didn't fix it. And I think that punished them. Jules Brandt, for me, is one of the most exciting players to watch, but has so many frustrating moments that I had a few of these moments in that US game, because it's a one final pass. It's just connecting on that third. On the final third, it's taken the shot when maybe there was a bit of an opening that she just didn't, like, her decision making is not there yet, but she's so good, and it's so frustrating to see these battles happen. But a player that I certainly need to give my hat off to is Ann-Katrin Berger, who was not in contention to make this Olympic squad 10 months ago. She was not getting any game time. Was she even on the bench? She wasn't even on the game day squad at times. She took a tough decision to move clubs, did so at Gotham, and has absolutely established herself as a force in the NWSL. And not only is she made the Olympic squad, she's the number one goalkeeper, and Germany do not lack any talent in the goalkeeping department, that's for sure. And is doing outstanding. She, I thought, was brilliant against the US, against Canada. I mean, do I need to say more? You can go back and watch that penalty shootout. That tells you exactly what Ann-Katrin Berger has been doing. But, the mentality, the strength, the mindset to put yourself in that position when you were not even in contention 10 months ago, honestly, you got to give her just a round of applause. And hopefully she gets some of, I think a medal around her neck will feel pretty good, kind of from a fairy tale perspective football. But obviously we know sometimes football doesn't like to do that. Regardless, I think it's going to be a fun showing. Germany and Spain, the two big European dogs. Certainly Spain needs to tighten up that backline, otherwise Germany will punish. And it's going to be it's going to be a good contest. That's, I think, what is for sure. And so is the final. Like, it's really difficult to know how the podium's going to look like. But what it is easy to know is that these are going to be really, really fun contests. And I mean, what an Olympics. It feels like the Olympics have been going on for about 2.5 months, but it's only been 2 weeks. So I'm excited to see how the final is going to go, how the podium is going to end up looking. I'm definitely going to have a post chat about that. I think there's a lot to talk about this Olympics, kind of what does it mean for the teams that got knocked out early. Australia specifically, they've made a head coaching change of, letting go of Tony Gustafsson. Canada, what does it look like for them to move forward? France, I mean, once again, getting knocked out, not making a final at home. Just in some ways, they just do not know how to perform on the big stage. They have a squad that is absolutely capable of winning medals, but they just do not know how to get the best out of them. And that's a huge topic as well. So there's lots to talk about. There's lots to talk about the schedule, which I think has been grueling. To play 3 games in 6 days across 3 different locations is absolutely bonkers to me. I don't think any of these athletes' bodies has been made to play this many games, and also some of these games going 120 minutes. It's absolutely ludicrous. So there's going to be a lot to talk about post-Olympics, but for now the focus is on Saturday and everything that's going to come around then. So let me know your thoughts on the finalists, on who can possibly clinch that bronze medal. I want to hear everything. Drop it down below in the comments. As always, to stay updated and to continue enjoying the beautiful game, make sure you subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow me on Twitter, and I will see you later.